Today's episode of This Week in Startups is brought to you by Desk.com, the all-in-one customer support app for fast-growing companies. Visit desk.com/twist to get your service desk up and running for as low as $3 per month. And by New Relic. Visit newrelic.com/twist and see why thousands of developers worldwide don't deploy without it. And by AWS Activate. It's easy to start and scale your business with Amazon Web Services. Check out free resources like one-on-one office hours with AWS Solutions Architects and much more. Learn more and sign up at aws.amazon.com/activate.
Hey everybody, it's Jason Calacanis, and this is This Week in Startups. Today on the program, Melody McCloskey of a startup that's absolutely crushing it, StyleSeat, which I was lucky enough to invest in one of their later rounds. 5 years, I think, after meeting her and passing on investing in her, making a huge mistake. So it's huge, another huge mistake episode of This Week in Startups. Stick with us.
That's what it's all about, man. They said, money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you. Yeah. Money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you.
Fun event.
Oh, hey everybody, it's your host, Jason Calacanis, and this is, of course, This Week in Startups. We're here at WeWork Golden Gate, which is a fabulous, awesome co-working space, and the people here are so delightful and nice that they came to me 2 years ago and said, hey Jason, we're huge fans of the show. I said, well, that's very gracious, thank you. You have obviously great taste. And they said to me, you're making me laugh now. Don't make me laugh
Sorry.
to the problem. It's okay, fun. It's a fun show. Everybody laughs around the whole show.
Serious.
No, it's a very goofy show anyway. So I said, listen, thank you. That's very, whatever. And they said, listen, would you take your show and do it in our new location, down in this area of mid-market, whatever they call it here in San Francisco, where Twitter's moving and everything. I said, sure. Can you build me a studio? They were like, yeah, we'll build you a studio. We're fans. We love you guys. So they built the studio, and now every month I do a show from here, and I actually work from here. So my office, my team's office for launch, and now inside, everybody knows I'm moving up to San Francisco this summer. I'm actually here. And the bad news, they're sold out. So I'm doing this promo for WeWork to tell you, come here, it's so great, and they have no desks left. So get on the waiting list for WeWork. Go to WeWork.com, because they might have room in some of their other offices. And, they have a beautiful space in New York, and they have space in LA that's also gorgeous. And it's really just like, I advise, and I'm not making this up, if you're a startup and you just raise some money, like getting a lease and getting a T1 put in, or fiber line put in, and getting the coffee and getting their reception and deliveries, mailroom, all this stuff is nonsense. It has nothing to do with your core business. Just get to work and pay $500 a desk and be done with it. That's my advice. Thank you, WeWork. All right, listen, if you are a super fan of the show, and we're 435 episodes into the show, you should know about the Twist List. Twistlist.co. It's a secret mailing list where the super fans hang out. Go ahead and join that. All right. I met Melody McCloskey. I'm pronouncing it right?
Yeah.
McCloskey.
Yeah.
I met you 5 or 6 years ago in Los Angeles because I was hosting this little party called Open Angel Forum, which was an angel group where you didn't have to pay to present, because they used to, back in the day, as you know,
Yeah.
they all asked you to pay.
Yes.
You got hit up by some of those people.
That's insane. Yeah.
They wanted you to pay like $5 or $10 to pitch angels, and I was like, well, fuck this. This is ridiculous. So I got all upset about it, and we hosted this, and you presented your idea for StyleSeat. Tell everybody, what was the idea back then, and then fill us in on what's happened in the last 5 years.
Yeah, well, the ideas always remain the same, which has been great.
Yeah.
But essentially, today we're the largest and fastest growing marketplace for beauty services. So some people have compared us to like Open Table for hair salons, basically. At the time, I think we had 1,000 businesses on the platform, maybe. We were pretty early on. But now we have over 220,000 today.
Wow.
So we've seen
some
some
growth.
growth.
So in 5 years, you've grown,
Yeah.
from 1,000 to 220,000.
I can't do that math, but yeah.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
Well, it's 220 times.
Yeah, exactly.
And so how did you come up with this business? Why does this need to exist in the world? Don't stylists have like a book on their desk and they just book stuff? Like, what value is there to the hair salon, or I guess hair salons would be the number one customer?
It's interesting. There's been a lot of disruption in the space just on its own outside of us. So it used to be that the salon was the gatekeeper in between the stylist and the client.
Got it.
So you would there was no real information about stylists online. They didn't have websites. They weren't on Facebook, if you can believe it, like way back in the day.
Right. And they used to have to like sneak you their phone number, like
Yeah.
when the manager was. I always remember that because I was like,
They
I really
weren't
like-
allowed to get the client's info. Exactly.
They weren't allowed to get clients' info. And I was always like, I really want to have a direct relationship because you cut my hair well, and I don't.
Exactly.
If you leave Astor Place in New York,
And salons would say, "Oh, we don't know where that person went. They didn't tell us," which is like the big
Right.
myth.
So no transparency.
So there wasn't transparency, and what we found is that a lot of stylists had to pay 50% of whatever revenue that they made to that salon, and in exchange, that salon would drive them customers because they own the relationship and they would manage the day-to-day of the business.
Right.
But what we sort of saw very early on is that there's disruption in the space where stylists were becoming independent contractors, essentially.
Yeah.
So they'd go work at a salon. You oftentimes don't know if your stylist is independent or an employee or whatever.
Right.
But we saw this huge movement with stylists where they would get a job at a salon and become what's called a booth renter, pay $500 a month. Now they're in charge of running their whole business, but they have much more upside now.
So if the salon had 10 stations, they would just say, instead of trying to make money off all this, we'll just let you rent a station for
Exactly.
$500
Exactly.
for X number of hours.
Kind of like the WeWork of
Yeah, it was like,
salons.
And so do you get the sense that the stylists were being treated unfairly, which I guess a lot of people felt about black town car drivers and before Uber, like, oh, they're taking too much, 50%, 40%.
Yeah.
Were they being screwed?
Well,
in
the
some
model
cases?
certainly wasn't in their favor.
It wasn't.
And a lot of that was because stylists, however, were they didn't have the opportunity to run their own business. They didn't have any tools.
Right.
So those that were running their own business would use pen and paper for some pieces, and scheduling they'd use a paper book, and then they'd have their cell phone for some things, and maybe some online tool for another. And so we kind of saw that craziness paired with the fact that customers want to book online more than ever, and on mobile, which is a huge trend. And so the vision for the company was, let's build a business solution for this vertical that runs their entire business for free, because no one was doing that, and we thought that was really important. And let's build tools that help them grow their business, and we'll make those reasonably priced, which allowed us to start to go to market with a product that was incredibly useful. So today we grow the average stylist revenue by 70%
Wow.
in the first 15 months.
What do you think the main piece of that is? That you're collecting email addresses and building like a CRM system, or is it the booking system, or are you doing lead gen? What do you think is the key to the success of this?
Well, stylists are artists. They're passionate about their work and their clients.
Right.
They're not passionate about running an efficient business.
Yeah, CRM is like
Exactly.
last thing on the list of what they want to do, probably.
Exactly. So most of the 70% comes from us cutting the time in half that their clients wait in between appointments, because we're CRMing them.
Right.
We are helping them understand pricing a little bit better. We're making, a lot of clients want to book after hours. They don't want to wait till daylight hours in order to book their appointment. So
That's always a pain in the ass. Like,
Exactly.
Why can't I just do this like on my phone whenever I want to?
I only think of that stuff at like midnight
Yeah.
on a Wednesday.
You're like,
where
man, my roots are coming in, or I need to get a haircut.
Exactly.
or
Look in the
like-
mirror, you're like, oh.
Yeah, no,
fix
I did it today. I was like, God, I need a haircut here, man. I gotta get a buzz going or something.
Yeah,
It's summertime.
seriously. So, we just bring efficiency to that space for them. We bring them a lot of value, and because of that, we've, most of our growth has been word of mouth.
Oh,
so
really?
stylists are like, holy crap, I'm almost doubling my business in the first year. They're telling their friends who are stylists are getting on it, and that's how we've seen 90% of our growth over the past 4 years.
All right, when we get back from the commercial break, and thanks to my partners for making this possible, I want to talk a little bit about raising money, and then also growth strategies, and as well, being a female founder, because we've heard a lot about female founders, not enough of them. You were part of this early class just 6 or 7 years ago, so I want to find out how you became a female founder, or just became a founder, and what you think were the things in your childhood or your upbringing or whatever that drove you to say, I want to actually run the show, when we get back from this very important message. Hey everybody, it's Jason, and what a great episode we've had. My friend Layla from Desk.com is here with me, and as you know, they're a huge partner on the program. And I want to just talk to you a little bit about Desk, just customer support and why it's important today. Like, why should people really pay attention and have an enterprise system for managing Salesforce today?
you know, Jason, the funny thing about customer support is it used to be an afterthought. You know, it used to be that thing that was like the 24/7 box that you clicked and everyone was like, yeah, someone will answer the phone.
Right.
But smart companies these days are doing different things. They're actually thinking about, like, their value prop is basically their SLA. They produce a product, but it's the services they put around the product and the engagement layer they put around the product that helps them differentiate. So if you think about small companies, you know, let's take an example like Zen Payroll.
Right.
That's a great company.
I use Zen Payroll.
A lot of people do. It's
Yeah,
super awesome.
fantastic, yeah.
Yeah, and they're disrupting an industry. They're doing something really interesting with what they're doing, and they are using their support as a differentiator. They're allowing themselves to engage with their customers in a deeper way by engaging them with this customer support piece. And they take it to a level deeper, too. They actually are leveraging it for product innovation as well. They have their product managers engaged in desk and looking at the tickets to get that information straight from the source.
So when somebody's complaining about something or they're a little frustrated, there might actually be a product idea, a product feature baked into that.
Totally. I mean, I'm a product manager. That's how I came up through the ranks. And I always got my information. If I couldn't go out to a customer, I got my information from a sales guy or this person or that person. Having that direct line to see what the customer actually took the time to write or say gives product managers a little bit of an edge when they're innovating and lets them know what their people need.
Who do you think should be using Desk.com? You know, who are the ideal clients that you guys have in there?
I think Desk makes a lot of sense for companies that need to get support up and running fast and want to make sure they're listening and engaging on every channel, right? Really, any small company that's looking for a way to deeply engage with who they're trying to sell to, whatever they're selling, that was my point. It doesn't have to just be software.
And it's not that expensive, right?
No,
you guys
it's really
charge
not.
like a couple of dollars per seat.
It depends. I mean, there are three. There's one that's like around 50, one around 27-ish, and one's there's a starter for $3. But
we're talking about like you put it on your credit card, it's lunch or something.
I mean, yeah, absolutely.
It's like the cost of 2 pizzas.
Pretty much.
Right.
Pretty much.
If you can afford 2 pizzas for your Friday kegger, you can afford to have
There you go.
Desk.com.
There you go. There you go.
2
There
pizzas.
you go.
You're in. All right. Listen, this has been great, Layla. You're delightful.
Thank you very much,
Thank you for being
Jason.
super honest.
Appreciate it.
And by the way, we love using the product, and thank you for supporting the program.
All right, listen, I hope you guys enjoyed that new innovative ad format that we did with our friends over there at desk.com. Give your feedback to me directly, Jason at inside.com. All right, when we left our hero, Melody McCloskey from StyleSeat, and you can follow her on the Twitter, Melody MCC, or at StyleSeat. You follow both of those, and go to styleseat.com and check it out. We were talking about a couple of issues, and one issue I want to talk to you about is raising money and being a female founder, right? Because this is the topic of the moment, the last year or two, lean in. But before all this lean in stuff happened, you actually decided at some point to be the founder of the company as opposed to just work at a company. And I'm not sure how old you are, but is this your first company? Did you work at other companies?
It's the first one, yeah.
So it's your first startup?
Yeah, I've been in the startup space for like close to 10 years now, though.
Oh, okay. So you worked at a couple of startups, product teams before that. What did you do before?
I worked at Current TV.
You worked at Current TV?
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So you were there in years 1, 2, and 3, probably.
Not quite, but...
Because wasn't it 10 years old when they sold it or something? It's like, I'm trying to think of the math. But anyway, you were there early.
Yes.
When it was like Al Gore.
Fairly early, but
Fairly
yeah,
early.
I was there a bunch, and yeah, we were. I was brought in to help figure out how we make their television content live on the web. So what's their video strategy?
Yeah.
What's the monetization strategy around that? What's the product that we built behind that? So
why did that? How did Current succeed, and how did it fail, and what's your handicapping of it? Because I felt that Current was fascinating in a way when I would turn it on and see short videos that reminded me of Vice now, that were like these vignettes that were really compelling and kind of indie, but it was also kind of hit or miss because you'd have 10 videos in an hour or something, or 5 in an hour, and I couldn't determine the rhyme or reason to how they were threading it together or what the common theme was, other than indie.
I think their content was pretty compelling, and they were able to find a couple of different interesting audiences because there's really nothing out there like that.
Right.
So they won Emmy Awards for their news shows. We were doing really hard-hitting journalism in North Korea, in all over the Middle East, and really building compelling content. I think part of the challenge was there wasn't maybe a quick enough cycle in vetting the content. Is this amenable to audiences. That feedback loop wasn't necessarily what we were great at when it came to the television content.
And hard to do because on TV you really don't get a feedback loop. Like
Exactly.
What does Nielsen tell you like 2 months later, like how you did at what time? It's kind of meaningless. Right?
Exactly.
At least on the web, like, hey, people watch for 7 of 10 minutes. They the drop off rate was at minute 6.
Yeah, and so because we had all those analytics, we were able to leverage that. When I was there to kind of feed that back into the production teams and tell them what people liked and didn't like. And
so that was the first job out of school?
No, that was
second
a
or
couple
third?
Jobs in, yeah.
So how long were you out of school before you became a founder?
5 years.
5 years.
Maybe 5 or 6, yeah.
And what was it in you? Because I know you come from a blue-collar background, I would guess.
My dad was a cop.
Your dad was a cop,
Yeah.
okay. My grandfather was a fireman. My brother Josh, everybody knows, was a cop and now a fireman. So we come
Nice.
from something similar.
Nice.
Cop as a dad.
Yes.
That's
Oh my
fascinating.
God. Oh my God.
Does that mean he's like a very authoritarian, like serious guy?
He's a serious guy.
He's a serious guy.
big
So he's not like the friendly cop. He's the cop who's like, you know
No.
why I'm pulling you over.
No, he would come back like when I was growing up with bruises all over.
Oh my
'cause he'd
God.
get in, fights. Like
Yeah.
he was all into it.
Okay.
He was on the SWAT team. He was like
Right.
kind of hardcore.
So I'm going to guess that he wasn't the entrepreneur in the family. So it's not like you looked at dad and were like,
You
he's
know,
an entrepreneur.
He was actually, he had a web business for rock climbing. He was really big
Oh,
into
really?
that. So he started selling rock climbing, like an e-commerce store
Oh,
that actually
interesting.
ended up doing really well. And like REI, kind of these big box retailers came to him and said, you need to stop. And
Oh,
kinda
wow.
Muscled him out of the business. And
Right.
he's like, what? I'm just some guy.
So actually you did learn a little of
a little
entrepreneurship from
bit.
dad.
He's always been really into computers and tech.
Oh,
certainly.
I see. So that's the connection. I always ask because I always tell folks, like, if you find a great entrepreneur, which you're well on your way to being, usually they have a parent or two who
Yeah.
are entrepreneurs. And what did mom do?
She was an art teacher when I was younger.
Oh, cool.
And then she's kind
Raised
of
you guys?
raised, yeah, exactly, 3 kids.
Yeah.
And she's great.
I always ask those questions because it's interesting to see what drove the entrepreneur. So what drove you to then want to be the founder of a company? Because as I always tell people, you need to have a certain imbalance maybe to want to be the founder because
Yes.
it's an unrelenting amount of pressure and problems and agita that a normal person probably wouldn't take on. I don't know if you agree with that assessment, but what do you think in you, what clicked in you when you're working and collecting a paycheck to then saying, I don't want to collect a paycheck anymore. I want to be the boss. I want to actually make something in the world that, I started.
Yeah. I think, when I moved out to San Francisco after college, I kind of started hanging out with people in tech. And I had initially, part of the reason, I'd never thought that tech was an option for me growing up and being in school. And no one had ever said, you can start a business. That's a thing. I didn't go to an entrepreneurial high school or anything. And so I didn't think that it was an option, especially.
So it wasn't even on the table for you?
No, not through school or anything. I was
Right.
an international relations and French major
In college?
in college, yeah.
Right. So even then, it wasn't even like you were pushed
No.
towards it or anything like that?
I knew I wanted to do something like that, but I didn't have a framework, really. And when
Do you feel that the high school stuff was, do you feel that because you were a young girl, a young woman in the case of high school, that you were specifically not pushed towards entrepreneurship and maybe the boys were pushed towards that a little more, or?
I think that's the case just because that's how society works a little
Yeah.
bit. I don't think it was anyone who deliberately said that.
Right.
But I was actually in an AP coding class. I think it was C++,
Right.
back in high school. And I was taking all AP classes and ended up dropping that one out
Really?
of all of my classes because I felt a lot of pressure as the only girl in the class.
You were?
There was a lot of, every time I would walk in the room, it was like a thing, and I was just sort of like,
That there was a girl in the computer
Exactly,
class. And this is in the 90s.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not
This
even
is in high
talking the
school.
late 70s or 80s. We're talking
Yeah.
about the 90s.
This was the 2000s, actually.
2000s,
Yeah,
actually. Wow,
yeah.
you are young. So in 2000, when you come into your high school senior AP C++ class, they're
Exactly.
like, haha, a girl's in here.
I ended up dropping it. It was
Out
the
of
only
peer pressure.
class I dropped because I was like, I'm going to get straight A's, and it's going to actually bring down my GPA if
Oh,
I get an
okay.
A- in this
Right, so
class
it's
or
hard.
whatever. And there's just too much pressure. I don't have time for this right now.
Right.
But I was really interested in it, and I, looking back, I really do wish I stayed in it.
Yeah. So was there a moment at which it crystallized for you where you saw somebody else or some event happen that you said, I have to start my own thing?
Yeah, I moved out to San Francisco and started kind of hanging out with tech people accidentally. And a lot of my friends ended up being founders of companies or involved in companies or product at companies. And we would all day long talk about fundraising and product and go to market and analytics and what's working and not and optimization, all this stuff that is very critical to like the very beginning stage of starting a company. And I only wanted to talk about that. I became obsessed with it.
Right.
It was like something clicked.
You had the bug.
And I realized, okay, this is the first thing that I've probably ever really been interested in, that I like want to move my life in this direction.
Right.
Again, didn't think that like being a founder was an option, but something in product.
Were any of your female friends founders back then? Did you have many
I didn't
role
know
models?
a single founder that was a woman. All my friends in this space, I mean, I had a lot of girlfriends, but all my friends in tech were guys.
Right.
And
So you were hanging out with the guys who were running startups, with the dudes, and talking about how they were raising money and doing all this stuff, and then you decided you're going to do it yourself.
And then, you're at happy hour and you're like, what about a company like this? And brainstorming like that. And it was like Garrett Camp and Travis Kalanick and Sacca. And like, there's a good group of us that were kind of hanging out all the time and throwing around ideas. And that was just like, what our friendship was about, is all these things, because it was fun. We were so passionate about it. And finally, I had the idea for a couple of years before I started StyleSeat, and I was really scared because I didn't know anyone that was like that. And Travis Kalanick actually turned to me and he was like, look, no one's ever going to tell you to do it or not do it. You got to just do it if you want to do it, or don't if you don't. And don't feel bad either way. But no one's going to come up to you and say, like, you really need to do this. Right. It's like, that has to come from you.
Got it.
And so go out there and find the smartest people in the world in this space and learn as much as you can from them.
So how did you actually start? Did you raise a small angel round from somebody and then start building? Did you start building at night? You bootstrapped.
Bootstrapped.
So how did you? What was the first
Which is
like
the
couple of months
thing
like? Yeah.
Ever.
Describe it.
So I found a developer who was a very early Googler who helped me build my first prototype.
Right. It's 2007, 8. What is this?
Oh my God, 9 maybe.
2009. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know.
After the financial crisis.
Yeah, and so he was sort of like, oh, I have an airplane now, and I fly it sometimes, but I'll write code too for free, for equity.
Right. So you begged him to code, and he did, and he got some equity.
So we got an MVP there. I got a designer to do the same thing who was a friend.
Wow.
I got my CTO kind of through that process, being able to show him this.
All
is what
with no
we
money.
do. All with no money.
Just begging, like, please do this, like, and getting them motivated and convincing them and cajoling them
Exactly.
to work for free.
Exactly.
It's hard.
It's incredibly hard. And
how do you say that to somebody? How do you say to somebody, I want you to spend 100 hours or 200 hours on this project, and I have no money, but this is why you should do it. Tell me how you would actually, the script of how you would say that, because there's entrepreneurs listening who would love to know how you actually did that, because it's hard.
Especially for a beauty company.
Yeah, like, hey, I'm starting something for salons.
Yeah.
Right? It almost like in that period of time.
Like, you've never been to a salon. Let me tell you why you should spend all of your time helping these people.
Exactly.
Well, it's about, for me, it wasn't like I'm just so passionate about making people prettier. That's not why I started the company. It was really about, there's a group of people out there that have been ignored by Silicon Valley. They're artists. They're mostly women. A lot of them are in, non-traditional tech markets. There's a lot of them in the Midwest.
Right, sure.
And they don't have access to tools to actually grow their business. And so, I want to build a company and a product that helps them support their families more effectively, that empowers them.
Right.
And then in turn, we're going to empower consumers and build a big ass business. Right?
Yeah.
But really, like, the heart and soul is in helping these professionals to really be successful. And they're artists and they're not as passionate about the business stuff. That stuff is, easy. This is what it is. And you get an engineer excited about the specifics of it. Yeah. And you show them the journey of, like, here's the idea and here are the big milestones and here's the product that needs to be built. And then they go, oh, I could do that.
Yeah.
That would be fun to figure out.
Right. So a combination of, like, hey, there's a real mission and, like, a sense of purpose here.
Yeah.
And it's a big opportunity that nobody else is on. So it's like, it's a pretty convincing thing.
Exactly.
So how long did you keep it going on fumes, and on?
It was like a year and a half.
A year and a half of people building for you for free. And you taking no salary? Were you working somewhere or freelance or just living off savings?
So we had taken, Dan, my co-founder, when he came on, he wrote a check to kind of support he and I, just barely, like, minimum wage level.
Ramen rent.
Exactly. And then also Garrett Camp wrote a...
Co-founder of Uber and co-founder of StumbleUpon.
Exactly. And Expa, and he's got a bunch of stuff happening. But he was like, look, I believe in you, and I think that this is interesting. He wrote a small check.
Right. Tens of thousands.
10,000. Yeah.
10,000. Literally 10,000.
Yeah. But that allowed me to at least quit my job, you
Right.
know, and kind of see, okay, if we live on minimum wage-ish type of thing,
Yeah.
you know, we can make this
So
work.
pain and suffering largely, and then for a year and a half or 2 years, that's when I met you, that you're trying to scrape this thing
7 days a week working for
Yeah.
that first year and a half, Dan and I.
With no money, losing money.
We had no
brutal.
office. We were in cafes. Chris always makes fun of me because he'd see Dan and I like wandering around SoMa, like looking for our next office for like the second half of the day because we got kicked out.
Right.
Then we'd go find bars that we could work at that were open until 1 or 2.
Right.
So we could, and we bring our laptops in and
Sure.
we're,
They love that.
Yeah,
That's always makes you popular with
yeah,
the bartender.
We're like, oh, can we get one drink to split and we'll
Yeah.
be here for 5 hours?
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
So you hustle your way there, but you start getting customers, which had to be rewarding, and they obviously started using it.
Yeah.
So I remember that early on. And then you raised a proper angel round at some point. How did that go?
Yeah, we raised a little over 700, I think.
Oh, wow.
And that was after we found a couple of angels through that process.
Yeah, the open angel firm and all that stuff. And this is pre-angel list, right? Or right
is-
Angel list might have just started.
It just started,
Yeah.
actually, because we did go out. Travis was our social proof for that.
Ah, yeah.
So Garrett was our first, Travis was our second investor.
Pretty good because Uber had just started to take off in San Francisco at that
Exactly.
time. So
Chris passed.
Chris passed the first time. I passed the first time.
Yeah.
Like
yeah,
an idiot.
Yeah. We might have snuck him in at the very end of the round.
Right.
But in the beginning, he was like, Mel, I just don't get beauty. I go to SuperCuts. Like
Yeah, no, if you look at Chris Sacca, it's pretty clear. No offense, Chris Sacca, but it's pretty clear that he does not understand beauty. I think all the beauty went
It's
to
not
his
his first
wife in that
fashion.
relationship.
Yeah, exactly. Crystal has it on.
Yeah, I think Crystal's the beauty in the family. And he's fully qualified as the beast. I'll see you on the next episode, Chris. So you get a little bit of money in the bank.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you got. Does it get easier when you get that $700,000 in, or does it feel
Well,
even like more pressure, or is it relief?
when
for
you're
you?
bootstrapping, you're like, all right, we might not be around next month.
Right.
So every single day, the MVP was critical. Being extremely, just knowing what you're doing every single day, being extremely organized. OKR, were everything.
Explain
for
what an
us.
OKR is. Yeah.
Objectives and key results. So that's just a way to basically measure. You know, if you want to say, okay, by the end of the year, we want to be X goal, Y goal, Z goal, which are usually concepts. So we want to own reputation for the beauty industry. We want to, you know, you kind of
And
name
the
those
key
things
metric
out.
for that is.
Key metric for that is this. Then you map that back out month
Which
over
might
month.
be in that case what? So if you want to own beauty is kind of like a, yeah, like you said.
Yeah,
like
well, so if we want to say, you know, we want to be the largest marketplace for beauty services, to do that, we need to hit $100 million in appointments booked or whatever that is.
Yeah, got
Then you say, okay, here's what our growth needs to be month over month to hit that. It just keeps you honest.
Gotcha. All right, listen, when we get back from the break, I want to talk about growth strategies because something you guys figured out, some growth strategy that boy, oh boy, has worked. And I think that's probably one of the hardest things, you'd agree. Like building a product is hard, but then figuring out how to grow it,
Yep.
super hard. So when we get back, growth secrets, and then sort of the last round, and you know, this now you got all these incredible people involved and so much being invested in, and where do you plan to take it? Hey, I can do this without even looking at the copy, but I just read New Relic. I think they raised $100 million or something. Did you read that New Relic raised $100 million or something? I don't know what the news story is. Gina can check and let me know. But New Relic provides application performance tools. What does that mean? They can tell you on a very granular level what piece of your software, server, infrastructure, whatever part of your stack is sucking at the moment and killing you and absolutely destroying your business and making your life miserable. They can tell you, like, there's the bad piece of code. And I've told the story before on the show. Launch Inside, we got something going wrong. Everybody's complaining. I literally have like Sequoia, venture capitalist, and other board members and investors like, your product is failing. What's going on, Jason? You're supposed to be like a baller entrepreneur who can build great products. You got all these great reviews in the New York Times, blah, blah, blah. And the product doesn't work, and you're getting one-star reviews. I'm pulling my hair out. What's left of my hair, I'm pulling out, going crazy. I asked my friends at New Relic, can you help me? Boom, they put New Relic on all of our servers, and like the hand of God, boop, they just point to this one piece of Ruby code that's like, oh, the voting mechanism is foobarred. We fix it, and life gets back to normal. And that's really the value of New Relic, is like when you have a problem or just optimizing. And yeah, they raised $100 million, Gina's telling me here. This company is so on fire, and they've been a long-term partner of ours, and we use the product. And if you don't believe, like, oh, Jason's just saying that because they're an advertiser, we used the product before they became an advertiser and a partner on the program. And Nike, Warby Parker, Airbnb, Comcast, and AT&T used them. So Airbnb obviously is magnitude bigger than my company. Go to newrelic.com/twist and get a free This Week in Startups t-shirt. Thanks for doing that. newrelic.com/twist. And just a great product with deep, actionable data, blah, 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 blah. And you'll love it, I guarantee it. 215 million total, yeah. I mean, that company's, I think that's like an IPO coming. I bet you that's an IPO. When I see that $100 million round, when it's a round number like that, you know what that says to me? That means like, they were like, how much money do you want to raise? And they were like, oh, I don't know. We don't really need money. And then they're like, we'll give you 100 million. And they're like, okay, sounds
exactly.
good. They're throwing, that's
Exactly.
when the number's like that, when the number's 37.6 or, 14.2,
Yeah.
like that's when you know like the entrepreneur like had to work and struggle to raise that round because, different chunks were coming in. When it's like 100 million, it's like, yeah, somebody was just like, I need to own 10% of this company or 5% of this company. Here's 100 million.
Yeah.
All right, speaking of which, growth. Growth hacking obviously becoming a big topic these days. Do you have a growth hacker there? Are you the growth hacker? How do you approach growth hacking at StyleSeat?
We have a strategic growth team.
A strategic growth team.
Yeah.
Who did you hire for your team, and what are their backgrounds? Right. Like, so who qualifies for that?
We hired this badass girl who she's a PhD from Harvard. She's pretty amazing.
PhD from Harvard. Wow.
Yeah. She also
usually that works against you in the Valley, but okay.
right. But she's amazing because she not only has she has an engineering and also applied math background.
Gotcha.
But she's great because she can not only crunch all the numbers and run all the queries and just like hang out in the database all day long. But she's also extremely strategic with the data and pulls out the right learnings. Like I got an 80-page document.
An 80-page document.
Yes.
She
the other
definitely
day.
went to Harvard.
Yes. That came back and it was basically just a PDF of, it was called The Health of StyleSeat.
Right.
2014.
Right.
And here's everything that's happening, essentially. And so that was really interesting. So for us, as we start to transition from, a back-end business platform into a true marketplace, starting to understand our top markets, what's driving, those hockey sticks of growth in like certain areas, how can we accelerate that? Ultimately, we need to drive liquidity in these key markets. So helping us understand, the factors behind that is pretty critical. That being said, she's only been working there for a couple of weeks.
Yeah. So already she's got a,
Yeah.
So how much of that growth hacking is, optimizing the product or spending money to acquire customers or studying data? It sounds like a lot of data studying. And then how much of that then drives the product team?
Yeah.
Do you find?
Well, so it does drive the product team, and she has, some growth engineers that act on her stuff. So not only is she informing, we'll be like, hey, our hypothesis for growth in X market or for this new product that we're going to be launching is this. She'll go and test that and say, no, that's not true, or this is. So she helps guide a lot of like the big business decisions for the company, pricing, strategy, things like that. But my point in saying she just started is before that, our growth is really on the business side because we've gone supply first.
Just getting all the businesses online.
Exactly. And that for us, we've tried a handful of things and we found by far, 90% of our growth has been word of mouth. So
is there a way to juice that? Do you ask people like, hey, if you refer somebody, we'll give you 5% or whatever? Or,
yeah, our stylists
invite a friend
aren't driven by that really.
No.
They find that, in the first 15 months, they grow their business 70%. They tell a friend. That person gets the value. They tell a friend. And we found that, not only is that growth for us, but the users that come on through that are many times, 100 times more engaged than users that come on through other channels.
Right. So buying a user from Twitter or Facebook or whatever, Google keywords, it's just the chances of them being as engaged as a friend saying, this transformed my career.
Yes.
Is just minuscule.
Well, and right now the barrier to using StyleSeat on the business side is pretty high. So we're thinking about ways to lower that, ways to juice growth. One of the reasons why we brought this team on board is to help us. We've got a bunch of ideas on, on like
we'll
the
leave
business
that out.
side. Yeah, and then on the consumer side, bunch of ideas there.
So you spent something like 4 years now building out this huge base of salons. What percentage of these practitioners are using it? Like, what's the size of the market compared to what you've already captured? And do you think about that at all? Or do you just think about how do we just take these 200,000 or so people and really just perform for them so that they'll eventually tell other people?
Yeah, well, part of what we're doing now is thinking about, okay, we've got a pretty good foundation of supply. We've got businesses in 15,000 cities. So on the supply side, we've also done, some pretty deep supply analysis, and we feel good about that. What we're excited about doing now is kind of the second phase of things, which is about building a consumer brand and starting to drive demand, and looking at companies like Airbnb and Uber and seeing the things that they did to grow, and what can we learn from that and apply that to our industry, which is pretty different, but there's still some commonalities there.
Does this mean I'll eventually be able to take out my iPhone and see like, oh, here's all the men's haircutters who are available and sort it that way, and then just click one button and pay, and you'll just do all that for me? Like I can just one click, get it all done?
We launched our first consumer app a couple of months ago in December.
Wow. Like stealth, or people know?
People know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty basic, but we're again, like part of this transition is starting to pay attention to the consumer experience for the first time ever.
Right.
And so, yeah, you'll be able to do a lot of different things.
Cool.
I'm so excited about that stuff.
You know,
Stuff that I've wanted for like so many years. You know? You gotta earn it.
Yeah. So how much have you guys raised today? Because I was looking at the investor list, and I guess I invested in the B round or something. Was that the A round or the B round?
A round, yeah.
Oh, so I just did the A round. And
Yep.
I actually have it here, 14.9 million. Is that accurate?
A little less, yeah.
A little less. Okay. So, but I do see some really like Ashton Kutcher is in there, and Sophia Bush. She's kind of a famous person. Who is that person, Sophia Bush? I know that name.
She was the star of a show called One Tree Hill for 9 years.
Oh, okay.
Which is pretty popular. And now she's the star of Chicago PD.
Okay. So she's just some actress who is really into tech or something?
She's really amazing. She has a deep following and passion and knowledge for the beauty industry.
Oh, okay.
And knows a lot of folks, sort of influential folks on the style side. So for us, it was a nice fit.
Yeah, maybe that's how I know, because I always hear that name, Sophia Bush or whatever.
Yeah.
I try to be like up on pop culture, but I kind of fail. I went to Coachella. I'm like, I know like 1/3 of the band names. The other ones, I'm like, who is this?
Yeah.
But anyway, why would you loop in an actress like that, and how do you actually do that? Because I hear that all the time from people. I actually wonder about it myself. I'm like, well, Inside's doing well. Is there somebody I could get with 1 million followers to get engaged in my brand who's, should I get Ashton Kutcher or somebody? How do you do that? How did you meet her? How did you get her to actually, she wrote a check. She's not just an advisor. She actually gave you her money.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is like, whoa.
Yeah. So, I mean, part of that was us understanding, and that was like a year and a half ago that she came on, us understanding that, okay, we're going to transition to a marketplace at some point. Mm-hmm. This is when we were still a business tool for hairstylists. Yeah. She was excited about the empowerment angle, about all the different areas where we were. And she said, look, I'm ready. I would love to help you with introductions, help you in the space, because that's just my world. But also, as you start to think more about the consumer side, I have some knowledge there. And so as we anticipated kind of the building of a consumer brand, it made sense to bring her in. And it was the type of thing where she came in just as any other angel would come in, and it took the same amount of time.
How do you find somebody like? Did you happen to know her, or do you like go to her agent, or a friend of a friend, or Ashton Kutcher got in touch with her?
No, another one of our angels introduced us to her.
And she has, look at this, 700,000 people on Instagram.
Girl balls.
Wow.
She does not play.
Yeah, so with 700,000 followers, she could have a real impact. So at some point, do you say, hey, Sophia, will you tweet this for us? Will you, book an appointment and then share it? Because I know Travis did that with Uber. Like Ed Norton was the first one in New York, or this person's the first one to take an Uber. He had that whole press thing going. How do you ask them to be involved, and is that sort of part of the deal, or do you just sort of make it a soft commit?
No, it's not part of the deal at all. I mean, she doesn't have to do anything for us.
Right.
So part of why she became involved is because she believed in what we were doing for these businesses. Mm-hmm. She believed in our mission, and she said, look, pull me in when you want to pull me in.
Oh, good. Yeah.
And so for us, it's like, we don't let people into the company for no reason. There's obviously strategic reasons, but.
Yeah. So monetization in this space, obviously been pretty impacted by having early investors who created, Uber on demand. Is on demand something that people want in this space? Because I've always tried to get the phone number of the, person cutting my hair and just being like, can I pay you double or triple to just come to my office and do this? Or why doesn't that exist in the world in a major way? Because I feel like everything else in the world's getting easy, but I still feel like getting your haircut is hard.
Yeah.
It's sort of like I rented a car. Have you rented a car in the last year or two? I haven't rented a car in years now, and it's the amount of time I spent at that counter, I counted 20 things that's wrong with this experience. So is there a better experience, and would you craft a better experience and then create an Uber-like experience at some point? You must have discussed that. Where's that on the table?
Yeah, well, we're really excited about the platform that we've created,
Yeah.
which allows us to understand yield in the industry. So we know all of the stylists. We know when they're booked and not. We're their cash register, so we know the payments and the pricing and how that relates to standard payments and pricing in that city and nationally and all these things.
So you actually understand the price of a men's haircut in 1,500 cities.
Yeah.
How does that?
We've got a lot of data. Yeah.
Is there any like interesting thing in there? Like, am I, like that from like, wow, isn't it amazing that people in New York pay
Maybe on the third week of May Data Team we'll have
yeah, exactly.
that stuff.
So there's a lot of data to comb through.
And
but
we're
you'll
actually going to be releasing a bunch of data too.
Yeah, this sounds like some great infographics are coming.
Totally.
Yeah, people in New York are spending $700 getting their hair
it's crazy.
dyed and
it's
cut,
crazy,
and they could be spending $70.
So as you think about, we know how the industry works today, and because we have all this data, there's lots of ways that the industry needs to change, and we see that, and we want to power all of those things. So as you think about last minute booking, as you think about price optimization, as you think about, for us, it's yield management on the stylist side. We can tell them, hey, we know that you have 2 hours between now and your next appointment. Will you cut your price in half to bring this person in? I'm making this up, but it's like these are things that we could do that help to grow a stylist business without cannibalizing their existing business. And you can really only do that when you're the platform that powers everything.
So we can get you a new customer. You give 50%. We can lure a new customer in at 50% off. That may convert, but your existing customers are not going to see this. Can you not target their existing customers? I guess you could, right? If you had their email address, you could say, don't show this ad to people or something. Just like retargeting does.
Absolutely. I mean, Living Social and Groupon captured over $1 billion in revenue just from hair industry, from the beauty industry.
Wow.
They were 40 to 50% of those verticals.
Wow.
And the stylists jumped onto that bandwagon because for the first time, it was a way where they could spend $1 here and get a customer in the door over here. They'd never had that before.
Yeah.
The challenge was that the business model was unsustainable. It was cannibalizing their existing
Why was
business.
it unsustainable? Explain that to people for Groupon and who didn't understand why.
Stylists didn't have a deep understanding, or this vertical didn't have a deep understanding of how their business worked. A lot of these guys are using pen and paper to run their business, their operations. So when they're cutting their price in half, to get access and then giving 50% to the daily deals site, they're effectively getting 25% of their cost. And so in addition to that, they would get, let's say, 100 new customers, which would cannibalize their existing business. And that 25% cost oftentimes was an unsustainable. They were losing money on that. And so you had these stylists that were getting all these customers and a big check, but then over time they were realizing that it wasn't actually helping their business in an effective way. These customers weren't coming back. And so what we're really excited about is lead gen, helping to fill their schedule in a sustainable way that we'll optimize we'll think about all the hard stuff on the back end for you and really help you grow your business.
You don't really want to blow out no pun intended, but you don't want to do like a blowout, like hundreds of people coming in the same month. It just makes life horrible. You really want to do it strategically and not have like this. And the customers, it seems that, the big criticism of Groupon, and listen, it was a tremendously successful company and still is, so you can't really over-criticize it, but the one that you heard consistently was like, these aren't high-quality customers, right? Like, you don't actually...
Deal seekers,
Yeah, you don't actually want the deal seekers because they're going to be kind of not happy customers.
Well, you don't have customer retention, you don't have the CLV from them. Yeah. And so that's something that we're really excited about wrapping our head around, is being able to, as we start to figure that out, being able to have a business model that is in line with the stylists, so that we're always, taking a cut of their success, and that we're raising the CLV of their existing customers in addition to new ones.
CLV.
Customer lifetime value.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I know some of these. I'm just, like you're talking in all these acronyms, but you basically taught yourself all this conversion funnel and all this stuff yourself. And now you're hiring people who are smarter than you and have more experience in it.
Way smarter than me.
How many people do you have now?
We have
approximately
a little under 30.
A little under 30.
Yeah.
And so now that you've raised all this money, I think is it now going to go into sort of a higher growth period, or are you going to just slow and steady?
Well, we're not going to make a bunch of hires. Instead, we're going to, start to think about things like monetization.
Yeah. Now, you didn't conveniently answer the question I had about the sort of Uber of haircuts. Have you guys thought about or kicked around the idea of I just open a StyleSeat app and I get a haircut, and you manage that whole process, and I don't even they're just StyleSeat, just like there's an Uber driver who I rate. Wouldn't it be great if there's just a StyleSeat person would come and cut my hair and then just go and then it was all good and I rate them?
Yeah.
Like, why doesn't that exist in the world? And when you think about that, how do you think about it?
Part of it is that it's a really hard problem to solve.
Okay.
So you either have to hire 100 stylists in a city, or let's call it,
Contract.
certain amount
Build a
of stylists.
partnership, yeah.
You buy their time, and then you build a market on the other side, and kind of the demand starts to go.
Right.
Or you have access to these stylists because you've spent 4 years
Right.
building a platform to grow their
Right.
business.
So you got them already.
Yeah.
So on demand is something you think about or no? Like
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
See,
I mean, from day
that's-
one, it's always been a core part of the.
Do the stylists want to actually
vision.
go to the customer and give haircuts, or do they just want them to come to
Some
them?
of them do. I mean, about 5% of the appointments that we have today are on demand.
Huh.
So
I wonder why more isn't on demand. Is it because people want to go hang out in the salon, or is it because people aren't willing to pay for the travel time that
I
it
think
would
that's
cost?
part of it.
Yeah.
You know, it definitely is a premium service.
It is?
Yeah. Well, if you pay a certain amount to go in, or you pay that plus 30-50% for someone
Right.
to come to you. So yeah.
So it's 50% more for them to come to you, but then they don't have to have that $500 seat there.
If they were only mobile.
If they were only
Yeah.
mobile, but they're not.
Yeah. Well, right now the demand market hasn't been established enough to really truly support. I mean, there are a lot of stylists that do that, but they're booking $1,500 for 3 hours
Oh,
commercial
really?
services and
Got
doing,
it.
you know, or they're the Kardashian stylist. Or
Yeah,
something.
exactly. So how do you think about actually retail? Because retail has been a big, huge, scary thing. But, Apple kind of made it not as scary. And a lot of people are looking at retail, pop-up, whatever, as like, hey, this could be an interesting way to take your brand out into the real world. Obviously, Uber was one of the first to say, hey, we're going to take on a real world business. And now you have Spoon Rocket and everybody's delivering food like crazy everywhere. Do you ever think like, if it's $500 a seat, maybe we should just make StyleSeat storefronts and try just letting them rent a seat there and, competing with those, I guess, mom and pop salons that are charging them that money and consolidate the whole space, the whole experience. Like, it would be wonderful to know I could go to a StyleSeat storefront and get like a specific type of experience like Starbucks. And have people done that? Because all I've ever heard about is like SuperCuts. Like, are there national chains like this?
It's starting to pop up in more and more. So the independent stylist, which is what you're talking about, that booth renter, the percentage of total stylists doing that grew like 20% last year.
Oh, wow.
So it's moving by leaps and bounds.
So
in
that's
that
where the
direction.
industry is going.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are a couple of chains that have popped up. There's one called Sola Salon, which is a couple blocks from here. And it's a WeWork essentially for stylists. So they have little offices like these, and you walk in and
They use an office.
it's really efficient. Yeah.
And how do they do it? Do they charge you by hour, by day, or by
They charge the professional, and then the professional charges their own prices.
What do they charge them for an office?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I
it's
should
an
look into
interesting
that.
thing.
It's like $500 a month type of thing.
Yeah, it seems like such a great opportunity, like to actually go to the real world. And
Yeah.
I've been pushing one of the other investments we have, Mouth.com, which is like artisanal food. Like, why don't we have a storefront? Like, because I went and visited, but it sort of takes you down a certain road. And I think it stigmatizes you as a real world business as opposed to a digital one.
Yeah. Well, and investors
Think it's
can get
scary.
hesitant about that. They want to see the
Dumb.
scalability. They don't want
Yeah.
it to be capital intensive. So when it gets to a certain size, you can kind of have more agency in making those types of decisions.
Yeah. They actually made the Mouth.com and did a little wine store, just a plug for Mouth. They did a wine store now, and so like they're actually getting people to go there.
We need more wine stores in the world.
Yeah, but when I walked through their inventory, it was like such an amazing bonding experience to have bought so much food from them and then actually go through their warehouse. I was
Yeah.
like, you should let people come to the warehouse and actually do this in person. So how has life changed now that you're established, you have 30 employees and a team, you got tons of money in the bank and all these great, incredible investors, excluding myself, but these other ones are pretty high quality, and like, so life has changed a lot since the days of begging your friends to work for free.
Yeah.
What do you think the biggest change has been for you, and what have you had to work on as a founder? Like, what's been the biggest challenge professionally for you as a first-time founder that now has a business that's scaling?
Yeah. I mean, from the beginning, every bit of traction that we got, whether it was we're getting stylists to come in and be part of our early testing beta group, or getting investors to come in the beginning, or hiring someone like a Dan who was getting paid $1 bajillion at his last company to come and write a big check to work.
Yeah.
At this company, you're living in the future, right? So you're not pitching them or getting them involved in the product as it exists today. You're telling them about the future. And so it doesn't really matter that you're working 7 days a week, a bazillion hours a day, living on a $5 a day food budget, like that type of thing, because you know where you're going to get. And so today we're closer, but we're not there. And so it feels like the same thing. You know, it's nicer to have an office now, whereas before we didn't. You know, there's huge life changes where
You buy 2 drinks instead of one.
I don't feel
Instead of
like
splitting wine, you can get 2 drinks. Always nice.
Oh man, life is
One
so
straw.
cushy.
Yeah, exactly.
We get boxed wine at the office now. It's so fancy.
Classy, yeah.
Classy. But we're not there yet.
Yeah.
And so it's different challenges and different needs. Now we're bigger. There's more challenges that come with that, but we're still not there.
Right.
So it feels exactly the same.
Right. But you're doing more planning for the future as opposed to just convincing people to let you have your vision exist in the world.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot more strategy. Yeah.
A lot more strategy and bringing smarter people in to come in and lead product and lead marketing and lead business ops and engineering. And it feels really good to be able to see things on the roadmap now that I've been obsessing over like for 5 years.
Yeah, it's
pretty
very
cool.
rewarding. So how do you manage a board as a first-time entrepreneur? I'm always curious, like, because sometimes I join boards and stuff like that. How did you learn how to host a board meeting? What should a good board meeting be? And what are those like now, today?
Yeah, so I have 2 people on the board, and then Dan and I, 2 investors, I guess. Chris was our biggest investor up until this last round when Lightspeed came on, led by Justin Caldbeck.
Oh, cool.
And Chris and I were friends before I started the company, which helped because our relationship has always been incredibly honest, pretty brutal.
Yeah.
You know, like
There's trust there then.
there's a lot of trust there.
Yeah.
And so managing the board meeting, he's been helpful as an investor because he's helped on both the here's the crap you need to do to grow the business, but also Melody, here's how you can improve as a CEO, and that's been pretty great.
Yeah. Oh, so he can be a little bit of a coach as well.
Absolutely.
Like, hey, here's better CEO stuff.
Absolutely. However, you know, my other investor, we worked together pretty intensely before we ended up raising money from him.
Right.
And so we, again, had that really deep working relationship and that trust.
Right.
So, you know, the first board meeting is like, I don't know how to do this. Here we
Right.
go. Like,
Yeah.
let's figure this out.
Right. And now you're in
but
a little
having
more
it
of a
be really,
rhythm.
yeah. I mean, and it's all substantive. I mean,
Yeah.
I like board meetings.
Yeah. What do you think? Because I had this discussion with a lot of entrepreneurs. So now that you know how to do them and you've, asked your friends on what they should be, what do you see the point of a board meeting? Like, what is a good board meeting? What is makes everybody feel great that something was accomplished and you did what you're supposed to do, for a company at your stage? What do you hope to get out of the board meeting? Because there's a lot of young entrepreneurs listening who they hear a board meeting, or I tell people in my company, oh, the board meeting's next Tuesday, and they just get, everyone's like, oh my God.
Magical, mysterious
thing.
thing.
It's like magical, mysterious
Yeah.
thing. Like, what actually happens in a board meeting, and what, as the founder, do you think is success coming out of it?
It's hey, here's what we need to do to be successful. And that's different things in every meeting, actually. So in the beginning, it was, my first board meeting was, here's my vision for the business. Now that we have an executive team and amazing people on product and marketing, here's what we think are the main levers. Here's the metrics that we want to get to the end of the year. Here's our OKR. And here's our plan to get there. Let's do a deep dive into the product and what that's going to be and what our philosophy is around product. Let's talk about marketing and our goals for the end of the year, and here's the specific things we're going to do. Sign off on that. And then the next meeting is, here's how we did. Here's how we're pacing.
Now you got actually performance going on.
Exactly. Now that you know our vision and we've all signed off on that, here's the execution pieces that we're going to need to accomplish. And I think you have to, it's a good meeting when you get a bunch of pushback, when you scare them a little bit because you're a little too ambitious, or you kind of push things to the edge and they push back, and then you have a really productive conversation about how can we actually hit this? This is a lofty goal, or do we think that this is actually going to work? And what if this fails? What are you going to do? If you hit your numbers faster, where are you going to apply capital to accelerate growth? Everyone should come out of it with thinking things, feeling a little nervous. You have a lot to chew on. There's to-dos. Okay, we're going to figure this out, or I'm going to come up with 2 different budgets for this and map out what our metrics will be for each, and we'll kind of figure out where we would feel better about, which direction we want to move in.
Right. And what do you think makes a good board member now that you've been doing it for a little while? And maybe what doesn't? Like, what's helpful for founders from the board members in the context of board meetings and that time in between them as well?
Yeah, I mean, there's certain types of people. There's, Chris is more of like a visionary investor.
Yeah.
Where he's worked with big, huge companies from the beginning. Twitter is one of them, but
Yeah.
he's worked with Instagram, he's worked with Kickstarter, like a lot of these companies. So he's seen that journey a few times, and there's just things that he's learned that he's able to
Pattern
relate.
recognition, huh?
There you go.
Yeah.
Then I am also working with someone, Justin, who has pretty much built out our entire executive team, right? And has helped to he's worked with a lot of marketplaces before. And so, like, he understands, well, at this company, we did this.
Oh,
At
so
this
very
company, it was more
tactical.
you get kind of that tactical and those knowledge, or
Yeah.
this is the type of person that I think would be really good for this position. I've seen these 3 different types in this position,
team
but I think
building,
this is what we
tactical
need.
stuff, yeah.
Yeah, and,
So
then
you got the vision person, you got the tactician.
Yes.
And
then maybe sometimes you have someone who's had operations experience building a huge marketplace before.
Right.
Maybe you have someone who's amazing at product and design. I think there's lots of different reasons why you take on different board members, and
Right.
it's nice when they complement each other.
And so now, what do you think the big challenges are? I mean, you've got some cushion there. I'm assuming you can work for a couple of years, given the money you
Cushion.
have. Well, I mean, it's not like you said, you're not running out of money tomorrow. So
Yeah.
obviously you've got
You're doing it wrong if you have cushion.
Well, I mean, what's the reasonable amount of runway in your mind? How much runway does Melody like to have in the bank? Based on your burn,
Yeah.
you want to be cash out 18 months, 24 months, 36 months, 12 months. How do you like to run a business?
We're in a big sprint to figure it out. The faster we can figure out kind of the core mechanics to build this marketplace, the better we are. If we need more time to figure it out, we have that time, which is great. But the idea is that you're running as fast as you possibly can, so that you're in a position where you're either cash flow positive or you can raise if you want to. We're right now in a strong sprint in order to understand those
Right.
mechanics of our business. So it's an execution play at this
Gotcha.
point.
So does that mean we're going to be running out of money in 3 months or something? Do I need to
No.
write another check?
No,
That's what
we're-
I'm talking about. It's like the runway and the burn. I always obsess about that number.
Right.
I like to keep it at 18. I always tell people in my company, like,
Yeah.
and I actually share the number with
We
people.
have
I
a
say
little more than that, yeah.
Yeah, I always tell people, like, this is how much money we have, and this is how much we're burning per month. You
Yeah.
divide one by the other, and you get to 19.2 months or whatever.
There you
and I
go.
always say, like, I always try to keep it at 18. Sometimes it goes as low as 12, and
Yeah.
I've had it as high as 50.
And I've closed rounds with 1 month in the bank.
You have?
before. I've closed, yeah.
Oh God,
I
I
mean,
never do that.
it's,
God,
especially
I'm so
when
conservative.
you're raising money for a beauty company in the tech industry, when there is not a
Yeah.
single other female CEO, like, it's not, sometimes you don't have a choice.
Let me ask you about that. I mean, we talked a lot about the business, and I don't want to harp on the fact that you're a female founder, but it is unique, and there are more. I think there's more than ever today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is great. I mean, somebody was complaining about Y Combinator on Twitter, and I was like, the Y Combinator chart is like this in terms of like female founders, and it's like goes like this for the last 4 classes.
Yeah.
I think it's at 15% or something, which I think that probably is more.
15 is better than.
Yeah, but
less
I
than
also
15.
bet it's more. It's probably a magnitude more than applicants. I would be surprised if it was 15% applicants.
Yeah.
So if they're I don't know if they're double or triple the number of applicants, that would seem like they're doing well.
Yeah.
But do you feel over these years of raising money that the climate has changed, and have you experienced? Do you feel discrimination as a female founder, or like creepy VCs who want to meet with you because they want to actually go on a date? I mean, I had one female founder tell me, like, I went on. Like, this VC asked me for a meeting, and then I realized I'm on a date kind of thing. Like, does that kind of creepy stuff actually happen?
I've had that stuff happen.
It does happen.
Yeah, of course it
You've
does.
had it
and
happen.
It's
Really?
weird. It's weird.
You've had I can't believe that. I'm going to go punch that guy in the face. Honestly, like, I feel like you're my sister now
Yeah,
that
but
I've
you know
invested in your
what?
company. Like,
I feel like that stuff happens regardless and wherever.
doesn't
And
happen to guys. I don't have women. I don't have female. I don't have like. I'm trying to think of a female VC, but I don't have like Ann Winblad or Esther Dyson or.
trying to seduce you.
Yeah, like, hey, hey, Jason, I want to hear about Inside, and I go, and they're like, hey, do you like Chardonnays or
I mean, I see it as an obstacle, like so many other obstacles, right?
Huh.
There's that obstacle. There's we got to figure out product market fit. We got to figure
Yeah.
out this and that. I don't focus on that, and
You
I'm
don't
not.
take it personally.
I'm not passing on the question. By
Right.
the way, I just honestly, it's a factor, and I know it, and I'm aware of it, and you just figure it out. You
Really?
come up with a solution like you come up with any other
You
solution.
shouldn't have to, right? Like, doesn't that kind of piss
Yeah,
you
but the
off?
world isn't fair.
Yeah, so you just kind of roll right through it. You're like, whatever, you know. If there's some
Yeah.
creepy VC who wants to like ask me on it doesn't have the guts to ask me on a date and wants to ask me about my business.
Yeah.
Under that guy's whatever. You can just write him off later.
I mean, whatever.
But
and
has it got-
it's not. And by the way, I'm not dismissing the problem, and
Right.
I'm not saying it's not a problem that we need to fix because we do.
Right. You just fight through it. Yeah.
My number one goal right now is to just build a big company, and by doing that, I hope that
Yeah.
I'm playing some role in making it better. There's a lot of women that have companies now, which is great, and there's certainly plenty of founders that have way bigger companies than mine, and so that's kind of where I focus on and keep my energy.
All right, so I'll just give my last two questions on that. Is number one, is it getting better? Do you perceive, like, is the industry more open to female founders and just more supportive in general? Yeah, just answer that question.
Yeah, I mean, in my experience, it is.
Yeah.
There's just a lot more women in the room. There's a lot more people in the room generally.
Yeah, sure.
It's frothy now. There's a lot of money these days, but
There are more female founders.
I feel better about it now than I used to.
And are the female founders now, because I've heard this from a lot of females about the mentorship between female founders, and obviously Sheryl Sandberg came out with her book and was like, hey, we need to mentor each other, we need to be supportive of each other. Is that starting to happen where female founders are sort of being actually supportive of each other? And
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen it. I mean, at the beginning stages of your company, you're just trying not to go out of business every day, because when you're starting a company, your company is always going out of business, right?
Sure.
And then you're raising money, and then you're going out of business until you can get to that cash flow positive.
it's a death march by definition until you hit cash
Exactly.
flow positive, right?
So as you're constantly going out of business,
There's
you're
the cliff.
you're trying to slow that down, and I didn't have time to think about that in the beginning. Now that we're a little bit bigger, I'm a mentor of the Teal Foundation.
Oh, cool.
I try and meet with as many women as I can, even just in short meetings to
Sure.
help and support however I can. I have those mentors, like Padma Warrior.
Oh, from Cisco?
Yeah,
she's a dynamo, huh?
She's amazing. She's
Yeah.
a huge mentor of mine.
I'm trying to get her for a keynote for one of our conferences, or let's just get her on the show. I mean, people are.
Padma, come on the show.
No, I mean, Producer Gina, let's work that out. But I mean, people speak very highly of her.
Yeah, she's great. She's
Yeah.
great. But she also, has a group of women that from all types of backgrounds that she's brought together, and I think that stuff is so important. In addition to, I have kind of the same networks with guys, and I think that's important too.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting. At one point, I just looked at my last couple of investments, and it just happened to be the last 3 in a row I did was StyleSeat, Red Tricycle, and Hand Up. And I was like, oh, wow, 3 women founders. Wow, great, awesome. But it wasn't, I didn't even actually consciously think about it. Like, as an angel investor, I just look at the product, and I'm like, okay, does the founder have passion? I know you have passion because you came to my event, and I saw it there in front of me, and then Chris gave this incredible endorsement, and then I looked at the product. It's like, well, it's a great strategy, great product design. It's easy to write a check for that. I mean, it makes it so much easier. But it does seem like
Knock on wood.
Yeah. But what is the right thing to do? And I know you're first-time founders, and you're just new to the industry in general. Like, you haven't been through the last 3 or 4 bubbles and bursts. But what do you think you should do as a founder when the market is this ridiculously hot? Like, does it concern you, the valuations, the craziness?
I mean,
what should you do?
For me, you got to focus even more than ever. You got to buckle down and really focus, because it's easier. Some say it's easier to raise money now than it was a couple of years ago. There's more money now than there was a couple of years ago.
Yes.
But it doesn't mean that it's easier now to build a business than it was a couple of years ago.
Is it harder even now, do you think, or easier?
Well, there's more commotion. There, in some cases, are more competitors.
Sure.
The market is just frothy. And so even if you are building a substantive business, people want to discount that because they see so many funny tech companies coming out or whatever.
Right. So noise.
Yeah, for me, it's like, I see it as activity in the tech space is a good thing.
Right.
I'm happy that there's more companies out there. I think there's a lot of efficiency to be driven in the economy, but for me personally, I don't really think about it at all. And it makes me think like, okay, well, either there's going to be competition for our next round, so we better kill it more than ever.
Right.
Or we now have to combat this noise. So it's an execution thing.
It's interesting. I think about it sometimes as you really should raise money when the market's hot.
Yeah.
And I was telling this to somebody else who had just a crazy a crazy financing available to them. And I was like, just think about if there's like another 9/11 or Iraq war or something, or real estate thing, like you're going to feel really dumb that you didn't take that money.
Yeah.
So are you okay with not taking that money, knowing that it could be 10 years before you ever got that kind of deal?
Yeah.
And that you only have 9 months of runway,
Yeah.
and you could have had 50.
And being in tech, right, with the core of being software, like you always want to optimize, and you're like, oh, but I could get 20% better, whatever.
That's a mistake, isn't it?
And it's a combination of that, and then also you got to have a macro view of it and say, someone's passing you around, like,
Yep.
if the terms aren't crazy, maybe you take it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that people are over-optimizing for the valuation and under-optimizing for the value of the investor. I know that sounds incredibly self-serving because I'm an investor, but I just look at that way myself. Like when I took Sequoia as an investor, I had term sheets from 2 or 3 other folks. I had one VC firm that wanted the deal so much they would just pay like a third more on the valuation than Sequoia would, and they said they'll vest 100% of my shares when we sign the deal. So I would have no vesting.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so then I could quit the next day, put somebody in charge, and I get all my shares and inside. Like, okay. And I actually brought his roll up, and I was like, look, I got this sick deal. And he's like, yeah, that is a unfair deal to the investor, and would you want us to take an unfair deal? And I was like, no, I want to work with the best venture capital firm in the world.
And there's something to be said for working with company builders.
Yeah.
You know, folks who have scaled your business 5 other times, right? Or similar businesses, or when there's, exactly. I mean, there's something to be said for that. And it depends on your state of the market. It depends on how invested they're going to be. What's their, how many other boards. There's so many factors.
Yeah, you got to think about that too. How many boards are they on?
Exactly.
Are they spread too thin? And
exactly.
Yeah, you know what I do is I just call, this is my advice to a lot of startups, call the people that person has been on the board of previously but is no longer on the board of, and then a couple of people they're on the board of. So like, if Chris Sacca was on the board of Twitter 3 years ago, he's no longer on the board. I don't know if he ever was on the board, but, talk to the Ev or Jack about him being on the board and what was that like, and whatever. Anyway, listen, this has been a great discussion. We've gone for 70 minutes. Oh, my God. Melody, you hiring any people at StyleSeat? I'm assuming there's a couple of jobs open there, a couple of developers.
Engineers.
We need
DevOps. We need a growth engineer.
You think you mean DevOps. That's not somebody. I have a sysadmin at Inside, and like that's the big joke is like, we have a real sysadmin and we have Big Iron and we have our own servers and everything, and he's like, because I'm kind of old school,
Yeah, there you go.
But everybody does this DevOps thing now.
DevOps, we need growth engineers. Just
right.
Solid, awesome
would they?
people.
Well, usually the first name at StyleSeat.com tends to work. First name at Inside.com tends to work. And then is there a job board somewhere? Is it jobs.styleseat.com?
AngelList.
Go to AngelList. Oh, use AngelList job board?
Yeah.
Oh, is that expensive or medium?
I think it's free, but I think it's $2,000 per hire or something like that.
Oh, if you actually hire them, you pay.
You can look at our jobs there and then just email me.
Oh, yeah. Look at the jobs and then go just do the end run right around Naval. But you want to see Naval make a little bit of money.
I'm cheap. No, I'm kidding. Go through this.
I mean, it's pretty
what you want to do.
These recruiters charge $20. Do you use recruiters?
Oh, God. I can't even talk about that right now.
Do you use recruiters or no?
I can't even
You don't use it, right? I refuse to use recruiters. I refuse to use them.
It's against everything I stand for, but they work.
They do work?
You need people right away that are good.
I find that people aren't that great. I think the people who go through
I got some good people.
Have you had it work out?
It makes me.
And then you have to write like a $20,000 or $30,000 check, and you're like,
can't
this
even
is
talk
ridiculous.
about it.
Yeah, it's sickening. I won't do it. I won't do it. People are like, oh, you don't understand. People pressure me. Like,
well, you're famous. You're online famous. It helps.
You're famous now too. You've been on the startups. There you go. No, honestly, it's like I think. It's I don't understand how the recruiters get paid this. Honestly, I really think the industry needs to smack down these recruiters.
I mean, AngelList is innovative. Hired is coming out.
But I mean, is it really necessary to take 1/3 of the salary or pay $30K?
I mean, if they can bring you incredible people,
it's just an unfair amount of money. I mean, how many people are they placing a month?
No, but it's worth it. Like if you have to, for us, if we're growing and we have to wait another 4 months to hire that person.
I understand. That's true. I just feel like, honestly, I mean, I know I'm going to get a lot of hate mail from recruiters right now, but honestly, I don't care because I've never used a recruiting firm in my life. I've always told them no. I've always been pressured into doing it, and it always works out just the same anyway. And you wind up I think you get better people. I don't think these recruiters work.
All right. We'll talk about this later.
Honestly. I mean, I just also think like they're kind of, it's unnecessary for them to charge as much as they charge. Like, what does a recruiter in Silicon Valley make now if they're placing?
I don't even want to know.
If they must be making $1 million a year. It's unfair. Recruiters are paid too much money. If you pay a recruiter 1/3 of the salary, it should all be like flat rate $10K. Flat rate 10K. That's it.
You should start a conference about this.
No, you know what? You should, anybody who's hears my voice, and it's 100,000 people for each episode, should then tell them, this is what I want everybody to do.
I think that's a good one.
Every startup, when the recruiter comes, say, I was listening to Jason Calacanis, and he said I shouldn't pay more than 10K, so I want to pay
Your
10K
house is gonna get
flat
egged.
rate. And then if everybody does it, then somebody's going to try to whack me.
Your house is going to get egged.
Exactly. I'm going to get like the anarchists. The anarchists are actually secretly recruiters.
Yeah, there we go.
For Christian Timbers or somebody. All right, listen, been an amazing episode. Everybody follow Melody on the Twitter. She's Melody MCC. And at StyleSeat, go to StyleSeat.com. Hey, thanks for letting me invest. That was super cool of you.
Yeah,
I'm really
thanks for having me on the show. This was
Yeah.
fun.
Thanks at Desk. Thanks at New Relic. Thank you, Jacob, our new producer here, and Gina, and Demont, and Emily for setting up the retreat, and Bryce for taking care of the launch fund. Sales, everybody. Brandon doing a great job. Andrew doing a great job. It's sort of, this is like Mr. Rogers when I take out the thing and I
Aw.
thank everybody.
It's like a happy
I think
family.
I thanked everybody. I might have missed somebody. Anyway, and thanks Tyler, and thanks Mom and Dad, and we'll see. Thanks WeWork, and we'll see you all next time on This Week in Startups. Bye bye.